Aboriginals.
We're in talk mode, and today we're talking about UK politics. Now, I'm generally not into politics that much, but with all the shit going on right now, I've had to delve in and just look into things, man. And genuinely, I have no trust in Liz Truss. Now, we had, the mini budget with Kwasi Kwarteng, or whatever his name is, uh, was ridiculous in terms of just the amount of crap they came out with that didn't seem to have been thought out. But it was mental and obviously caused the market to crash and interest rates to go up and Bank of England to go crazy and whatnot. But we knew where we stood somewhat, and we had energy prices frozen for 2 years. We're gonna get what is it, income tax cut and all these other tax cuts and whatnot. Um, and then since then, we've had about half a dozen U-turns, and new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and yeah, it's a bunch of crap right now, isn't it? Um, and oh, what does that mean for us? Well, we're not having that freeze on energy prices anymore. Or sorry, it's 6 months long now, so by April, things will start doubling in terms of costs for us as standard citizens. Not getting an income tax cut, which is fair enough. I mean, considering we are borrowing a lot as a nation, probably makes sense not to have tax cuts that were announced. But it's like we can't plan for anything because they keep changing their mind and keep changing uh, the policies and moving the goalposts. And it seems ridiculous that out of a country of almost 70 million people, only 80,000 elected this new prime minister. Um, yeah, it's a bunch of shit right now. And there's a lot of turmoil coming our way. Now, they keep blaming all this on Russia, but it's not all on Russia. Yeah, that obviously plays a factor on a global scale, but it just seems that we've had internal problems within the country for a long time. And I'm not like particularly pro Labour right now either. Um, I've been recently watching the Labour files, and I'm probably do a podcast on that at some point. But I, conservatives are not doing a great job. I think Boris Johnson was doing a better job. Now, don't get me wrong, he was stupid and he had to go, but still, like, how have they gone from bad to worse? It doesn't make sense. And considering those 80,000 people voted for her based on the policies she tried to implement, and those policies have now been reversed, do, uh, I mean, how does she stay in power? Do we require a general election? And if we do require a general election, will that actually make that much of a difference to us as normal citizens? We're kind of shafted at the moment, and this PM is toothless. Like, yeah, her policies were messed up and they weren't gonna work, but I would have had a lot more respect for her if she stuck to them. Like, or not even respect's probably not the right word, but I would have been like, all right, she's come with a plan, she's sticking to that plan. If it blows up in her face, it's her own fault. If it works, great. Like, does that mean that when they came up with this plan, they literally did not cost anything. And as soon as they started costing it, they realized, shit, we can't afford this, and then reversed the whole thing. Because the damage is done, like to the markets and interest rates and all that. That's all done. Like, yeah, the pound recovered a little bit after Jeremy Hunt came and did his little mini budget or whatever you want to call that. But like, for the most part, we're all still shafted. People who own houses and renewing their mortgages are going to be paying a lot more. So, would it have been better to just stick to her plan politically, even just save political face? I don't know. Well, apparently she came out last night and apologized in some BBC interview and shit. And the and the interviewer, I think, turned around and said to her, "Well, you know, you've already ruined lives. The U-turn isn't gonna change that." And she didn't have a response for it. She didn't acknowledge it or whatever. I don't know, man. It's just fucking hell politics, isn't it? It's just it's ridiculous, and we pay the price for it. Um, so yeah, man, what's our way out? What's our way out? A general election? A lot of people calling for that, Labour especially, and of course they would because they're ahead in the polls and whatnot. But are they going to do much better job? I don't really trust them, man. I'm still in the middle of this Labour files thing, which again, like I said, I'll do a podcast on eventually. But like, they don't seem much better. The 6 month plan that these lot are doing right now for the energy price freeze, that's what Labour had anyway. Difference is Labour keeps going on about doing a windfall tax on energy companies, but I guess that's not off scope now, based on what Jeremy Hunt was saying yesterday. He was like, "Oh, nothing is out of the realms of possibility, basically, and we're gonna make some difficult decisions." What does that mean for us, man? Like, why? Like, we have to wait 2 weeks to hear about that, and I'll probably do a podcast on that once that's released. But what can we expect? Spending cuts across the board, NHS dying, freaking benefits going down, no rise with inflation, I assume. Um, what other cuts can they do? What's interesting is the one thing they won't cut, or this, and maybe a controversial opinion, is how about you cut the amount of support we're sending elsewhere in the world? I mean, I currently is focused on Ukraine, but like everywhere, I don't have figures to match or figure out what we're sending and where we're sending it, but I'm sure billions are being spent on supporting other countries in their efforts. Um, and right now we know we're sending a lot of weapons and whatnot to Ukraine, which fair dues. Like I get why we're doing it, but surely there's got to be an end goal for that or limit for that because it just seems to be being absorbed by Russia and they're just taking it on the chin, aren't they? So really, a peace effort needs to be made in that region. Um, and us sending weapons isn't going to encourage that, and it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money. So at this point, at what point do we decide that we can't put any more money into foreign efforts while the people in our own country are struggling with basic needs? I don't know. It's a moral dilemma, isn't it? We don't want innocent people dying in Ukraine. That's awful. Like we don't want that. Um, and that's the reason we're providing help. And I guess there's an element of Russia wins in Ukraine, then Europe's next. So there's an element of that. But at the same time, you're putting spending cuts on the benefits of UK British citizens and people who are working hard here in this country, paying into the economy. They can't afford to heat their homes or feed their children or whatever. Like there was some stories about nurses that weren't eating and stuff like that. Like it's ridiculous to think that we're a in quotes first world country and we've got these kind of issues. So is it the government's fault for the over reliance of on gas from Russia and oil from the Middle East? Um, and I read something recently about uh, Parliament voting against solar farms in our country. Now, why? Why? Uh, Is it something about like, oh, it's gonna make the landscape look ugly? Well, bitch, if who's gonna give a shit if the landscape looks ugly when you can't fricking eat or heat or use energy? And apparently, we're gonna be facing rolling blackouts uh in January, February, where they, for whatever reason, they want to stop the electricity between 4 and 7 p.m. Now, if you were gonna do it, why wouldn't you do it in the middle of the night or early in the day when people are at work or something like that, rather than in the evening when everyone literally gets home and they want to cook dinner and the kids are at home and they need heating? It just seems a bit stupid, and maybe that's a bigger topic that needs to be discussed on a different podcast. But I don't know. It's all related to this mini budget and to the policies the government's making and to the decisions they're taking. And fucking hell, I don't know, man. What's the next step? Really, I was gonna do a podcast on, you know, should we have a general election? But based on the current conversation, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's any point. Like, and I would have done a podcast on like who should you vote for as well. And honestly, like both Labour and Conservatives seem a bit stupid right now, and I don't know if I can put my trust in either of them. But then you look at the other available parties, and you got like Green Party, who seem good on the face of it, but will they be able to solve the problems that are here right now? I mean, even if you went all in on solar farms and whatnot, it's still going to take a couple of years before it's even hitting us or we're feeling the difference as consumers. And like you look at stuff like right now, like gas prices apparently have gone down, but our prices are still going up, and it's got something to do with them, the companies buying gas 12 months in advance or something to that effect. But it's like, well, we get that, but then if they're buying gas 12 months in advance and the gas prices are low right now, why they're not buying gas like crazy amounts right now so that they can guarantee a price drop in April or June or July or August next year if it's 12 months in advance? Like, why is that not happening? Why is that not being spoke about on the news or being like guaranteed from someone? Why is the government not putting the money in that instead of other crap? Don't know. And if we want to look at spending cuts, how about you cut the spending on subsidizing MPs' meals in Parliament? Like they earn enough so they can afford their own lunches. Do you know what I mean? We don't get subsidized meals. So how about we stop subsidizing the meals? And whatever saving, that might be a tiny ass saving. I'm not saying it's gonna save us billions or anything like that. But how about you do that first? Cut those kind of spending first. Stop subsidizing shit for MPs who are on decent money, and do it that way. Now I'm not for like some people are, oh, tax the rich more. No, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like they're already paying a high amount of tax, and that's great. That's fine. That's right. They earn more, so they're contributing more to the system, and the UK and government or whatever taxes. So that's fine. But I wouldn't be like, oh, tax them even more. Like that doesn't make sense. Like they've worked hard for their money. You know. It should be equal in that sense. So we're being taxed, they're being taxed. That's cool. So I don't see it as that as the answer, but there's no need for like shit like subsidized meals and shit like that. Like no one else gets that, so why do they get that? How about you cut that spending? I don't know, man. Like I've gone around in circles and a little bit like left to right. Like I don't. There isn't a clear directive. I'm just kind of discussing things that I've been reading recently regarding UK politics and yeah, man. There's no trust in the government, no trust in Liz Truss, and it's like no matter who's in charge, we're probably gonna face the same issues. Really, fucking awful, man. I've been rambling on for how long now? How long has it been? About 15 minutes. So I'm gonna leave it there. Um, let me know what you think, and keep an eye on the feed. We'll be getting some more episodes coming soon regarding the Labour files and probably delve into some other bits of UK politics as more news comes out. Thank you guys so much for listening. Contact me at Wahab Originals with any comments. Take care. Goodbye.